All right, so that was a lot. Now let's talk about our practical foot and ankle exam. Obviously, this will be dependent on where the complaint is, right? Where their pain is, what the injury mechanism was, but tailors to each individual patient, but this is the general template we can follow. We'll start off in a seated position and we have them take off their shoes and socks and we're just going to inspect first, right? Do we see any swelling? Do we see an infusion? Do we see bruising at all? You can see that quite a bit with ankle injuries. Next, move on to palpation. Typically, we're going to palpate around the entire area of pain. The general idea is usually we'll go for the malleoli versus medial and lateral. Maybe palpate the Achilles at the mid-substance and the insertion. Then move our way down into the foot. Maybe start with the navicular on the medial side. Work your way over to the base of the fifth on the lateral side. Then kind of palpate the metatarsals. And then maybe work underneath the foot, go to the plantar fascia. But once again, this is going to depend on where they're having it. But kind of just think about guiding your palpation down, starting at the ankle and working your way down to the foot. Next, move on to range of motion and strength, and just start with range of motion. Do plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, inversion, eversion, and then we're going to test those exact same motions of strength. So resisted plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, inversion, eversion. Then quickly moving on to our neurovascular, just feeling for the DP and PT pulses. Then we're checking the sensation of the dorsum of the foot and the web space and the plantar aspect. Then move our way down to our special tests. So that might include our anterior drawer test. Then doing our talar tilt. If any concern for a higher ankle sprain, then we'll do the squeeze test, the dorsiflexion external rotation test, and any other special tests that you need. Then after we're seated, we can get them standing, so that way we don't have to get them up and down multiple times. But standing, we'll go back to inspection. We'll look and say, hey, when they're standing, do they have severe pes planus or is there asymmetric pes planus? And then a strength perspective, when we're standing, a heel raise is a good one to do because it covers a lot of different things. Not only is it a strength test, we can also do it for a special test, meaning, hey, are they able to maintain their arch when they're doing their heel raise? And then you can also do it single leg as well on each side to test strength and to see how they look if there's asymmetry at all. And finally, if you need to, you can do the hop test if you're concerned for any sort of stress fracture. But overall, there's not a whole ton on the ankle and foot. Oftentimes, our job is to rule out a fracture first, then point to palpation will be helpful, and then we do our history, and that's going to tell us a lot about things, and then kind of bring in our special tests as needed. But however, this is a solid general approach to not miss the most common things. All right, so now we're going to talk about our practical foot and ankle exam, and there's not a whole lot going on here, and it's going to be very dependent on where they have their complaint, right? So you don't have to do the whole thing every time, but this is kind of the general framework. First, start with inspection, looking at the malleoli. Do we see them first and foremost? I mean, we're looking for any sort of effusion in the ankle. We'll check on the bottom of the foot too, looking for any sort of bruising from a Lisfranc type injury. But that's pretty much it for inspection. Palpation-wise, really depending on where you're having complaint, but generally you can start with the malleoli, work in medial and lateral, work back to our Achilles, work through the mid-substance and all the way into the insertion. And then work in our tarsal bones. Specifically, want to make sure we hit the navicular side of things and then also the base of the fifth metatarsal. And then working through our additional metatarsals and our cuneiforms and the rest of our tarsal bones as needed, and then working into the toes. Then we move on to range of motion, where I'll just have patients do both sides together. Can you bring your toes up towards your nose? Good, then push all the way down. Then get back neutral and can you come on in for me? And then roll out. Good, and we'll check essentially strength the same way. So bring your toes up towards your nose. Don't let me push you down. Good, now push down like a gas pedal. Perfect, push in this way. Push out that way. Fantastic. And then we can move into our special tests depending on what their complaint is. If they come in for an ankle sprain, we can check our ATFL with the anterior drawer right here. Or we can check our CFL with our talar tilt. If we're concerned for any sort of higher fracture, we want to make sure, hey, we're palpating up here with the fibular head right there, and then doing our squeeze test to check that syndesmosis. And if we're really worried about high ankle sprain, we can get into our external rotation, dorsiflexion, testing that strength there. And if we're worried about a calf injury, do the squeeze test to see, do we get plantar flexion? Usually we do that more prone, but that's it. And then neurovascular, just check our sensation, distal pulses, say, hey, do you feel me here? Here in the web space and lateral foot. We can also do the standing portion for the practical ankle exam. It can be helpful, essentially watching them stand, say, hey, do they have really noticeable pes planus? And then we can have them turn around the other way and look and say, hey, do we see the arch there? And then kind of you go up on your toes for me, looking at that, good. And then down, kind of see them do that again for me. So are we maintaining that arch? Good, and back down. So, and essentially we watch them walk then here. So kind of you walk a couple steps for me forward. Good, and come on back. Good. And that essentially concludes our practical ankle exam. You just watched a clip from my Master MSK course. If you want to learn more about that, click right here. And if you want more related sports and lifestyle medicine videos, click right here.